I was driving a shortcut from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. 29 Palms is located in the desolate high desert east of LA. The shortcut was all two-lane road through total nothingness, except for passing through Amboy. California. Amboy is a nearly abandoned town nearly as far below sea level as Death Valley, with a dormant volcano and lava field on one side and a salt flat on the other. It was also, at the time, a hotspot for satanic group activity. So I was driving by myself in the afternoon. I stopped in Amboy and snapped a picture of the city sign, just to prove I was there to friends who dared me to take that route to I-40. I got back in my car and proceeded to drive up into the mountain range between Amboy and I-40. Once I reached the top, I am driving north through a canyon with high grass on both sides of the road. Up ahead, I see some stuff in the middle of the road. As I approach, I slowed down to see a red Pontiac Fiero stopped sideways across both lanes, a suitcase open with clothes scattered everywhere, and two bodies laying face down in the road, a man and a woman. I stop 100 feet or so away, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. Being a Marine, I reach under the seat and pull out a 9mm pistol and chamber a round. Something seemed very wrong. It looked too perfect, as if it were staged. An ambush? Was I being paranoid? Something was just wrong. Getting out of the car seemed unthinkable. It was the horror movie move. As I scanned the road, I saw a line I could drive. Past the guy in the road on his left, swerve to the right side of the woman, behind the Fiero, and I'd be on the other side. I dropped it into first gear, punched it, and drove the line I planned. I passed the back of the Fiero without hitting it or either of the bodies in the road. I continued forward a couple hundred feet and slowed down so I could breathe and let my heart slow down. As I looked up into the rearview mirror, I saw that the two bodies had gotten up to their knees and 20 or so people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road by the car and bodies. At that moment, my right foot smashed the gas pedal to the floor and did not let up until I had to slow down for the I-40 East on-ramp. I will never know what would have happened to me had I gotten out of the car to check on the bodies or stopped my car closer to them. Somehow I do not think it would have been good. Sometimes real life can be scarier than a movie. When I was maybe 10 to 11, I was homesick from school and was on the couch watching TV when the doorbell rang. It was the mailman, who had told me that we had gotten a package, but it was so big that he needed help carrying it. I wasn't that old, but I knew right away something was wrong. I asked him where his truck was, because I didn't see it parked out front. He kept telling me it was around the corner. I asked him why the regular mailman, who always brought lollipops, wasn't here, and I was told he was visiting family. He kept telling me to open the front door, but I politely told him that I wasn't feeling well and that I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I told him we would pick up the box from the post office, and he was telling me how much of a hassle that would be and how my mom would want me to do her this favor. I told him that I would come outside, but that I had to get my shoes from upstairs first. I closed the front door and locked it. Then I ran through the house and locked the back door and called my neighbor who worked from home. She was a close family friend, and I called her up screaming into the phone that she had to come over right now. Then I stood at the locked front door and stared at the man through the window in the door. He saw me staring and yelled through the door asking if I found my shoes, so I yelled to him that I called my neighbor to help carry it because she's older and stronger. He just turned around and ran away. It scares me to think how many kids he has tricked before. Me and my two brothers went to investigate the graveyard we had on the farm we lived on, which was occupied by the former owners and their relatives. Of course, the night we chose was the night of a full moon, and it was bright enough that we could clearly see our shadows in stark contrast to the ground. Fast forward to us having been inside the small raised graveyard and moved on to investigating the sky and surrounding fields, when my older brother said, "What's that?" and pointed down the field and towards the road. When I looked towards the road, I saw a black figure moving rather quickly towards us, but it had no gait and moved smoothly. As it ran, I expected it to turn or slow down to navigate through the metal gate in the fence meant to keep cows from leaving the fields. But instead, the black animal passed right through the metal as though it never existed. By this time, we could see it clearly enough to note that it had no shadow of its own and was clearly not a calf or coyote. The animal ran alongside a 5-board wooden fence until it turned sharply within 200 yards of us and passed through the fence and headed directly for us. At this point, all three of us yelled "run" somewhat simultaneously and took diverging paths through the woods back to our house. We all arrived at the house safely, and after a brief discussion of what we all saw, we decided not to try anything of the sort again. The hanging was a bit different. I was asleep in my room and woke up seemingly randomly. The moonlight poured into my room so that it almost seemed like daylight, and I felt drawn to look out the window facing the front yard of the house. When I did, I found that our yard was filled with people in Civil War era garb, recognizable due to my dad being a reenactor, and a stage had been set up under one of the two very old oak trees. On the stage stood a man atop a box with a bag over his head and a noose around his neck that ran to a branch which had never existed in all my life on the farm. The portion of that tree only bore a knot from where a branch had been. A man in gray/blue uniform moved onto the stage and opened a scroll/parchment and read aloud from it for the crowd to hear. I could hear nothing but saw the man in the noose shrink away from the words. The man stopped reading and let his hand drop to his side, then turned and asked the man in the noose a question. The man in the noose shook his head. The uniformed man then kicked the box out from under the man in the noose, and he fell through the stage, stopping abruptly when the slack in the noose ran out. His body jerked as the rope cut his fall short, and he did not move again. As I stood there trying to comprehend the scene before me, a motion in the back of the crowd near my house caught my attention. A man in uniform had turned and was staring directly into my eyes, and I felt so afraid that I ran back to bed and hid in the covers until I drifted into a dreamless sleep. For years I assumed this occurrence had been a bizarre dream, the result of an overactive imagination of a young child. But when I was in my mid-teens, I discovered from my parents that a Union soldier had in fact been hung on our farm for treason, aiding the Confederacy. The only trees that could have been the right age to be used and still be alive are the two oak trees that I saw the crowd gathered around. To this day, I have no idea what the hell happened that night, but I know it was real, and I know it was of my own mind and not the result of a story or movie. But I will never forget how real it looked.